um, talk about Macbeth a little bit. I know I did Macbeth character analysis videos earlier on in the year, up as far as the soliloquies in Act Two before he kills the king. And I'm going to do a couple of short videos today. I'm going to post them at different dates, just looking at more to do with his character. I was looking at this question. It's a question. If you're in my full time class, you'll know that I set you 3 questions to do over Christmas, that you could pick one of them, but hopefully you did at least one, on Macbeth, and this was one of them. Macbeth's ambitious nature and his emphasis on self-preservation is the driving force behind the plot in Macbeth. It's a lovely question, very, very easy. Obviously, it's got the key elements of ambitious nature and emphasis on self-preservation, and there's the model answer. Okay, so the model answer is coming in at just about 1,400 words in length, follows the A-B paragraph structure. And it takes you through, you'll read it, takes you through the ambition part, which really goes up as far as when he becomes king. That's his ambition. And then it goes into the self-preservation part, which is essentially the story of Macbeth after he becomes king. And it just occurred to me that even though I do this in class, but in terms of the video content, I haven't really dealt with that second half of Macbeth's story. So that's what I'm going to do now. And again, in 2 separate videos, really quickly. So this is, as you know, oh, no, I'm after. This is, as you know, the Macbeth mind map. And as you know, I'll just get my big face off that for the time being. There we go. Sometimes when you switch to documents on Word, it causes that to happen. The mind map that you hopefully, well, again, if you're in my full-time class or indeed in my part-time classes, you have these mind maps. If you don't have them, pmcbrunner@icloud. Email me. They can be purchased along with any other notes, essays, and so on and so forth. But what I want to do is, we've looked at this part here. What I want to do really quickly is just look at this part here. So that key kind of stage in the play when he goes from, like, he's a killer by the end of Act 2, Scene 2, but we do kind of feel sorry for him even after he's killed the king, because he's like racked by guilt. Will all great Neptune's oceans wash this blood clean from my hands? And I did say that for me, and I know I've been accused before, remember what I've said to you, my opinion on the play is my opinion on the play. You're allowed to have your own opinions on the play as long as they're supported by evidence, and it's all about debate, healthy debate. But I've been accused before of kind of looking back on Macbeth's character at the beginning of the play based on what we know at the end and changing my opinion of him. It's not the case. I don't find him an attractive character. I think he's a very interesting character. I think he's a very corrupt man right from the beginning. That's why his first words are, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." That's why when the witch is telling him he's going to be king, he immediately thinks of regicide. So, I don't think he's good and then turns bad. I think he's always bad. Just the degree of, the wicked intent within his character becomes multiplied as the play goes on, or becomes more evident, I suppose, as the play goes on. But the key kind of stage of transformation from heroic Macbeth at the beginning of the play to the butcher at the end of the play comes in Acts 3 and 4. And I just want to talk through those key elements and explain some of the quotes, and that's the end of this video. So, what alienates us from Macbeth when he becomes king? First of all, his relationship with Lady Macbeth. He rejects her. So he needs her to start the play so they're close and tight. But then when his focus changes from ambition to self-preservation, so ambition to be king, he needed her to help him do that. But when he becomes king and he wants to maintain his power, but also his life, because he knows what's coming after life, he's going to hell, she can't help him with that, so he abandons her. So this quote here, "Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck," very, very, very important quote for Macbeth's character, Lady Macbeth's character, relationships in the play, any number of questions you could use, imagery in the play, moments of drama, that rejection of her, that a dismissal of her, that belittling of her, calling her his little chicken, telling her to be innocent when she can never be innocent. She's a co-conspirator and a regicide with him. It's cruel. It's, even though Lady Macbeth is a villain and it's difficult to sympathise with her, especially at this stage of the play, Act 3, having seen what she's done and how enthusiastically she did these bad things, you still feel on a human level for her to be utterly rejected by a man who previously in the play called her his dearest, but his dearest partner in greatness. Now she's his dearest chuck. So just if you're talking about language, the juxtaposition between dearest partner in greatness and dearest chuck, which means little chicken, that's a great example of Shakespeare's use of language to illustrate the change in his character and therefore in their relationship. The decision to frame Malcolm and Donalbain, to set them up, as regicides, which is bad enough, but also as patricides, which means to kill your father. It's really cynical. And this is the quote here: "Our bloody cousins are bestowed in England and in Ireland, not confessing their bloody parricide." Now, Shakespeare writes parricide, but parricide means patricide. But there he is, like, cynically, knowing that Malcolm and Donalbain are completely innocent. There he is, announcing that as king, that, he's outraged by the terrible crimes of his cousins and accusing them of being covered in their father's blood when in fact he knows they're innocent. So again, there's a darkness and a cynicism and a cruelty in that action that again further alienates us. This is the point of this video, to talk about how we become distanced from him. His complaining about the witches, like when he says that upon my head they placed a fruitless crown and put a barren scepter in my grip. Now, this has all got to do with Banquo, right? Banquo's prophecy was, "Thou shalt get kings though thou be none," which means that you won't be king, but your kids will be kings. Macbeth knew that before he killed the king. Now, after he kills the king, he's saying, "Oh, the witches, they put a barren scepter in my grip," which means essentially that he can be king, but he can't pass the crown or the authority of kingship on, as would be traditional. It's a patriarchy. You pass it on through the family line. But it's very hard to feel any sympathy for him there, because sure, he knew that before he killed the king, and now here he is blaming the witches. He needs to take responsibility for himself, but he doesn't take responsibility for himself. In fact, he never does in the play. And again, that's another factor that alienates us. And if you're looking for imagery, fruitless crown and barren scepter, two brilliant examples of Shakespeare's use of imagery, metaphor, unusual noun adjective combinations, fantastic. And then, he orders the murder of, of Banquo and his son Fleance. Fleance is a child. He says here, Fleance's son must embrace the fate of that dark hour. So he's given a clear instruction for an infanticide. Infanticide means the murder of a child. And when Macbeth does that again, means that the audience are horrified by who he is. How could this be the same person that we admired so greatly in Act 1? And yet it is him. He is transformed. Now again, is he transformed in a kind of a metaphysical way? Like, is this a different person? No, it's not. This poison was always in him. Killing the king has released it. Then when Banquo is killed, and he hears his best friend and former comrade is dead, instead of feeling any tinge of guilt or regret, "Oh, what have I done? This is terrible," he tells the murderer, he celebrates the murderer, and he says, "Thou art the best of cutthroats." And again, look at the use of language there. Thou art the best of cutthroats. The language is monosyllabic, words of one syllable. And there's a brilliant juxtaposition between a paradox. How can you, to be a cutthroat is to be, that's horrendous, awful. It's an ugly thing to be. And he's celebrating, you're the best of it. So that contrast illustrates the depth of Macbeth's corruption, how scary he now is. He celebrates murderers, even people who murder his own friends. We know by the end of Act 3, he's haunted by Banquo's ghost, which is his conscience. Don't forget, Banquo's ghost is a part of the supernatural. It does appear in the play. There are stage instructions which say, enter the ghost of Banquo. So it can't just be in his head, although it is a manifestation of his conscience. And when he's haunted by Banquo's ghost and realizes, there is no escape from damnation, because Banquo's ghost, if it exists, is proof of the supernatural, which is proof that he's going to be damned. His response there then is to say, I am in blood. stepped in so far that should I wait no more, returning where his tedious go o'er. Now that's a really, again, really important quote for imagery, for corruption, for evil, Macbeth's character, the play as a gripping drama. It's an extraordinary moment because what he's saying is, I'm going to hell anyway, so I might as well keep killing. And that's a moment where you go, wow, this is a very dark, insight into the way human beings can think. Remember that disturbing psychological question, or disturbing psychological thriller question? Because, if he says he's going to hell anyway, he could stop killing. Because killing isn't going to change his fate. But what it's going to do is try and, going back to the question I mentioned earlier on, he's trying to preserve his life so for as long as he can. And what he's saying is, I'm going to keep on killing anybody who gets in my way. And he never thinks about their lives or their families or their futures or their tragedies. He only thinks of himself. Again, a deeply unpleasant, troubling depiction of humanity, not heroic. By the end of Act 3, he goes to the witches. Beginning of Act 4, he goes to the witches and he's putty in their hands. He's malleable. Remember that word I taught you? Malleable. He's malleable. Hecate, we've heard say to the witches at the end of Act 3 that, he shall spurn fate, scorn death, and places hopes above wisdom, grace, and fear. Because security, she said, is man's greatest enemy. Man always wants something he can't have, which is security. So when they say beware Macduff, he already knows that Macduff is, not his friend. He didn't attend the coronation, questioned him immediately after the regicide. But then when he hears Macduff has gone to England, what does he decide to do? He decides to slaughter Macduff's family. And it's a very famous line from the play, and you need to learn it. The castle of Macduff I will surprise, have it attacked. Give to the edge of the sword his wife, his babes. I always say put to the edge of the sword. Give to the edge of the sword his wife, his babes, and all unfortunate souls that trace him in his line. And the imagery there is extraordinary. This image of the edge of the sword. Children and women and innocents being slaughtered. And he does it enthusiastically. Not because the witches tell him to do it, but because they simply say, beware Macduff. And he's a fundamentally weak person by the end of this play. There's a wonderful paradox. There was a question recently, I don't know what play it was on, but we looked at it in class, on chaos and confusion in the play. Again, all these Shakespeare questions that are worth looking at from the point of view of, they're usually transferable from Hamlet, King Lear, Othello, into Macbeth. And there's a real confusion in the mind of the audience that this person who appears so strong, he's a violent killer, he's a warrior king, he's that alpha male, and yet he's so weak. The witches just find it so easy to manipulate him, and of course it's because they know the one button they have to press, and the one button they have to press is his desire for security. So that's, by the time we get to the end of Act 4 and Malcolm and Donalbain meets to discuss, getting rid of Macbeth, we're happy to see him go because he is completely transformed from the moment he becomes king in Act 2, into this vile, hideous, killer. He always was a killer, but he was a killer at the beginning of the play who killed in the name of God and duty and honour and right and justice. And now he's just the most selfish individual and kills for himself. So there you go. That'll take you through that part. In the next video, I'll do it shortly, is going to be on the end for Macbeth and what we think of him at the end.